you very much, and good evening. Who's been here before? Quite a few of you. Well, welcome. We're going to have fun. I'm quite insistent that we get going quite quickly, and we're a little bit early, because I know you'll have loads and loads to say tonight. And by the way, there are loads of people still coming in, because we'll be queuing up when I arrive. My own view is just let as many in as you can. I don't think it matters too much if the door comes open. Don't make them wait outside or in the ante-room. Let's get them in the room. So look, this is very much your event. And what a time to be holding it in the era of even Jeremy Paxman being bored with politics and agreeing with Russell Brand. So let me introduce you to our panel, who are a lively bunch, and I'll tell you a little bit about them, and then we'll get straight into it. And I have no idea, other than the first question tonight, what's going to come up. So it's very much in your hands. Now, on the end, my right, your left, Nadeem Zahawi is a conservative. He was born in Baghdad, raised in East Sussex. Chemical engineering is what he studied at university. He's probably one of the richest MPs in Parliament. He's made a fortune from the polling organisation, YouGov, and various other business enterprises. And he's a very vocal, loyal conservative. He's the kind of bloke who comes on programmes like ours and defends the government line regularly. And we love him for it. So that's Nadeem Zahawi on here. Next to Nadeem is Natasha Engel, who is from the Labour Party. A multilingualist, it says in your bio. I'm not sure, which languages do you speak?
German, Spanish and Portuguese.
And a former journalist. So Natasha worked as a translator before going through the trade union movement, and she's sort of steeped in how politics works because she's worked as a private secretary for various Labour government ministers, and since 2010 she's been chair of the Backbench Business Committee, so she knows all about Parliament and government, and the two things are not necessarily the same thing, but I'll let her explain that as we get on. And she's also very distinguished, and we'll get into what she's done during the course of the evening. Next to me on this side is Professor Baroness Young, who is a crossbench, an independent peer, so she doesn't vote with any particular party on a regular basis. She was appointed Baroness Young of Hornsey in the London Borough of Harrogate in 2004 as an expert on culture and the arts, particularly the visual arts. She's been a member of loads of House of Lords select committees, including the European Union Committee and the House of Lords Reform Bill Committee, which is described to her as tempestuous, which is probably a fair way of describing it. And next to Baroness Young is Julian Huppert, who's a Liberal Democrat. Julian's the only professional scientist in the House of Commons and is a big campaigner for greater scientific understanding. He grew up and studied in Cambridge. He's got a PhD, and he was elected in 2010, so a relatively new MP. He's a big cyclist, which I'm very glad about. So he chairs the all-party parliamentary group on cycling, and he says he's strongly opposed to university tuition fees, as many Liberal Democrats were. I'm sure you remember. So there we are. There our panel. Let's get straight into our questions. And our first one is on the front row. Would you like to tell us, do we have a roving mic? Yes. Now, our first questioner has got the first question because she won a competition. So if you'd like to tell us your name, where you're from, and your question.
My name is Sophia Grabankina. I'm from Bristol. And I'll just tell you a bit about myself. I've just won first prize for the under 18s age category in the National Council of Women's Giving Young Women and Girls a Voice competition. Everyone who entered had to answer the question if you could influence government to take action on one issue to improve the lives of women and girls, what would it be? For girls my age, there's a distinct lack of female role models in the corridors of power. So my proposal is that girls should be encouraged to aim higher in their careers, and that the government should set an example by making sure there are more women in the top political jobs. I'd like to ask the panel if they think this is something that government should be done.
Julie.
Well, firstly, congratulations, Sophia. It's really good to see this happening, and I look forward to you having influence on more than just one issue, and maybe you'll be here in a few years' time talking to everybody. You're absolutely right that there is a shortage of female role models. We see that in subject after subject. I used to be in a physics department where it's very heavily male. We do quite a lot there. And we have the same problem here in the House of Commons. I think you're absolutely right to say we should try to get more women into more senior positions. There's some discussion. The Labour Party went down the route of having all women shortlists in order to select people, having quotas and things like that. I don't like that, because I think, and I know a lot of women feel exactly the same, I think women should win selections and get to where they are because they are the best person for the job, not because they're the best woman for the job. I actually find that quite demeaning. So I think we have to do a lot. Within my party, I do a lot of mentoring to try to support people. Joe Swinson, who's the Liberal Democrat minister, has done a lot of stuff on this area, trying to get more women onto boards, doing a lot of stuff on broader issues like body confidence, actually, which is quite a big issue, and we may get onto that later. So you're absolutely right that we have to get more women there, but I want to see women getting there because they are the best. There are lots of fantastically able women. I've just come from a meeting with some prospective Lib Dem parliamentary candidates. I want them to win because they are the best person in their seat.
Ooh, well. First of all, I've got to pick up on something that Julian said, if I may, because you seem to equate the idea of having all women shortlists with somehow picking an inferior being, possibly, because you haven't got a mixed shortlist or it's not all men. The issue is, in having all women shortlists, is that there are a number of structural and systemic barriers which prevent women from being selected in the first place. So what you're doing by all women shortlists, as I understand it, is to try and even out the playing field, but it does not necessarily mean that somebody's not as good. My own view on your question, for which thank you very much, Sophia, is that it's a very complex issue because there's lots and lots of different things that I would like to see happen, and they're kind of interrelated. And I think this issue about more senior roles is absolutely right. But I guess a shorthand for what I would say is that more women ought to have more information, knowledge, confidence, understanding about what their options are and being able to take those options and to make those choices. So some women don't want to be top of the ladder in a career. Other women do. Some women want to have children and a career. Other women don't want to have children and a career, and so on. So as many women as there are different choices that we need to be able to make. And at the moment, we're not in a position to make all those choices.
Natasha.
Yeah, I'd follow on from that actually. When I was working in the trade union movement, we were really concerned about the number of girls that were not choosing sort of harder apprenticeships, and a lot of girls were choosing beauty therapy, while lots of boys were choosing engineering. And we kind of tried to find out why it was they were doing that. And they basically, when we were interviewing them and asking them about it, it was when we told them how much an engineer earns and how much a beauty therapist earns when they have their eventual careers, that the girls kind of suddenly went, oh my God, I didn't know that. And when they realised that, they actually did start thinking about doing something that wasn't necessarily beauty therapy. But I think that's pressure at school. And that's peer pressure, and that people sort of, the idea of a girl going into an apprenticeship that's engineering is a bit sort of, a bit blokey. So I think there's a lot of work to be done at that level. I think though, a lot of the issues have just been raised here about how do we get more senior women role models and how do we get them into the corridors of power, which I think is an excellent answer to the question. There are really serious problems in the way that we select our candidates in the political parties. Having all women shortlists isn't ideal. Not having all women shortlists is also not ideal because then you don't get women in. I was selected on an all-women shortlist in the next mining area. If we hadn't had an all-women shortlist there, they would not have selected a woman. I mean, I think that's a fact.
Well, we're getting slightly hung up on all-women shortlists, whereas the question is about the top positions in government, and those are positions that are in the gift of the party leader. It's not about some sort of scientific process where you have to pick the best person for the job. It's basically a gift.
Well, that's right, and in fact, if you look at the Labour benches, we've got a lot more women MPs on our side. We have got a lot of senior women on the front benches, so in the very senior jobs. And if we come into government, those will be the ministers. But I think that the question that you're asking isn't just about how do we get the more women into those senior roles. It's also about how do we give young women the confidence to see themselves in those roles and not think, well, that's not for me, that's for somebody else. And that's a real problem. And I think the only answer to that is actually women who've got senior roles in politics or in business or in every other walk of life to go into